I used to think I knew every sound our house could make. The creak of the old hallway floorboards, the hum of the fridge, the faint ticking of the wall clock in the kitchen, they were all part of the quiet symphony that lulled me to sleep every night. For 5 years, that was my comfort. My wife's slow, even breathing next to me was the rhythm that made me feel safe, like no matter what happened outside, we were untouchable in here. But a few weeks ago, the silence started to feel different. Heavy. Unsettling. It was 2:14 a.m. when I woke up the first time. The room was so dark that the red glow of the alarm clock was almost blinding. I reached for my wife instinctively, but her side of the bed was empty. The sheet was cold under my hand, as if she had been gone for a while. At first, I assumed she'd just gone to the kitchen or bathroom, but something about the quiet felt wrong. I called her name softly, almost whispering. No answer. I got out of bed, heart starting to thump louder than the clock. The floor was icy under my feet as I walked through the house. The kitchen light was off. The bathroom door was open and dark. Even the porch was empty. Her shoes were missing from the rack by the door. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the empty space where her sneakers usually sat. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe she went for a short walk. Maybe she couldn't sleep. She always said late-night air calmed her down. But she'd never done this before, not without telling me. She came back an hour later. I was still awake, sitting on the couch, trying to look casual even though my pulse was racing. She froze for a moment when she saw me, like she hadn't expected me to be awake. Then she gave me a small smile and asked why I was up. I could ask you the same thing, I said, trying to keep my voice light. Couldn't sleep. Went for a walk, she replied, already heading for the bedroom. That was it. No explanation, no details about where she went. I lay awake the rest of the night, staring at the ceiling, feeling like something invisible was standing between us. The next night, I stayed up on purpose. She lay next to me, breathing slowly, but I could tell she wasn't asleep. Around 2 a.m., she carefully slipped out of bed. The mattress barely moved, but I felt it, like the absence of her weight was louder than any sound. I heard the faintest click of the front door. Silence followed. I almost ran after her, but something in me said to wait. If she was hiding something, I needed to be sure. When she returned almost an hour later, she looked startled to see me awake again. She gave me the same line, just needed air, and went back to bed. Over the next few days, I started noticing little changes. She was quieter during breakfast. Her phone was always face down on the table. She started locking it, which she never used to do. She smiled less. When I tried to touch her, she'd flinch slightly, like she wasn't ready for contact. The worst part was pretending I didn't notice. At work, I couldn't focus. I kept picturing her walking somewhere in the middle of the night. Was she meeting someone? Talking to someone about me? I started imagining worst-case scenarios, some secret lover, some double life I didn't know about. One night, I decided to stand by the window and wait. I didn't even sit down. I just stood there, hands gripping the curtains, heart racing. And then I saw her. She walked across the yard quickly, pulling her coat tighter around her. Her hair was tied back. She didn't look back at the house even once. She disappeared around the corner, and I stood frozen. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down. The next morning, I couldn't even look at her without feeling my stomach twist. She asked if I was okay, said I looked pale, and I just muttered something about being tired. I wasn't just tired. I was losing my mind. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe she was just stressed. Maybe she needed space. But deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. Every night after that, my ears were tuned to the smallest sounds, the rustle of sheets, the creak of the floor. I could hear her even when she tried to be quiet. And every night, she left. Sometimes she came back smelling like cold air and rain. Sometimes there was this faint metallic scent clinging to her coat that I couldn't place, like wet iron or blood. I told myself I was being dramatic, that my brain was inventing clues. But my gut screamed that something was wrong. 5 years of marriage. We had plans, dreams, vacations we still wanted to take. And yet here I was, sitting awake in the dark, waiting for my wife to come home, like a teenager waiting for curfew to be over. The last straw was when I found dirt on her shoes one morning. Not the light dust from our street, but wet, dark soil, like she had been somewhere muddy. That day, I barely said a word to her. She noticed. She asked if I was upset. I said no. But in my head, I was already making a decision. If she left again tonight, I wasn't just going to sit there. I was going to follow her. No matter where she went. No matter what I found. The next night, I felt like I was preparing for war. I put on dark clothes so I wouldn't stand out, laced my sneakers silently, and sat in the living room with all the lights off. My heart was hammering in my chest long before anything happened. Every little sound felt louder in the dark. The tick of the kitchen clock, the faint hum of the fridge. At 2:07 a.m., I heard the faint creak of the bedroom door. My body went completely still. I heard her soft footsteps on the hall floor, the quiet metallic click of the front door unlocking, and then silence. I waited 10 long seconds, then got up and slipped outside. The night air was sharp and cold, and it hit me like a bucket of ice water. I crouched slightly, staying close to the shadow of the house, and saw her figure about half a block away, walking fast down the street. My pulse spiked. I followed. At first, I stayed far enough behind that I could barely make out her silhouette under the streetlights. Every time she passed under one, her shadow stretched long across the pavement. Her pace was steady, almost too steady, like she'd done this before. The street was empty except for us. My shoes felt too loud on the concrete, even though I tried to step lightly. She turned the corner near the park, and I had to hurry to keep her in sight. The park at night looked like something out of a nightmare. Trees like black skeletons, branches scratching at the sky. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of damp earth and dead leaves. She walked right into the park. My stomach dropped. Why would she go there? At this hour? I hesitated, standing just outside the park entrance, then forced myself to keep moving. The gravel path crunched softly under my feet. Every sound seemed amplified, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of something small in the bushes. She didn't slow down. She walked deeper into the park, down a winding path I almost never used, the one that led toward the small clearing near the old gazebo. When she finally stopped, I ducked behind a tree, breathing through my nose so I wouldn't make a sound. And then I saw him. A tall man stepped out of the shadows near the gazebo. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. He said something I couldn't hear, and she nodded. They stood close, too close, and my stomach twisted. Was this it? Was this the confirmation I'd been dreading? I edged closer, moving from tree to tree, until I was maybe 20 feet away, close enough to catch fragments of their voices when the wind shifted. Can't keep doing this, I heard her whisper. He'll find out, the man said. His voice was low, almost a growl. My breath caught in my throat. Find out. Find out what? They talked quietly for a few more minutes, but I couldn't make out most of it. I caught words like paperwork, dangerous, asterisk, not ready yet. Asterisk. Every muscle in my body was tense. I wanted to step out and confront them right then and there, demand to know what the hell was going on, but something stopped me. They weren't acting like lovers. There was no touching, no laughing, no soft glances. They looked serious, scared even. The man glanced around suddenly, and I froze behind the tree. My heart was beating so loud I was sure he'd hear it. After a few more minutes, they both turned and started walking away, in opposite directions. I stayed hidden until I was sure they were gone, then stepped out into the clearing. The grass was wet with dew, and my shoes left dark prints as I crossed the space where they had just been standing. Nothing. No clue what they had been doing there. By the time I got back home, she was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. I stood there in the dark, looking at her, feeling more confused than ever. If she was cheating, why meet in the middle of the park to talk in whispers? And what was that about paperwork? I barely slept the rest of the night. The next day, I tried to act normal, but my brain wouldn't stop replaying every word I'd heard, every look on her face over the past few weeks. At dinner, I watched her carefully. She smiled at me like nothing was wrong, asked how work was, told me she'd had a quiet day. I almost laughed. Quiet day? She'd been out in the park at 2 in the morning, whispering with some man about secrets and danger. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I decided to do something I had never done before. I went through her things. Late that afternoon, when she was showering, I picked up her phone. Of course it was locked. 4-digit passcode, I didn't know. I tried to guess, her birthday, our anniversary, the date we got engaged, but none of them worked. My hands were shaking as I put it back exactly where I found it, terrified she'd notice. That night, when she left again, I followed her once more. This time, I stayed even closer. She didn't go to the park right away. She took a different route, walking down a darker street toward the edge of town. I trailed her for nearly 20 minutes, keeping to the shadows, my heart pounding harder with every step. Finally, she reached an abandoned-looking building, an old maintenance shed near the train tracks. She knocked on the door softly. It opened, and someone, maybe the same man from the park, let her in. I crept closer, crouching behind a rusted dumpster. Through a crack in the dirty window, I saw them standing inside. Papers were spread across a table. She was pointing at something, and the man nodded, his face tense. Then I heard her voice through the thin wall. "We have to finish this before he notices." Before I notice, my stomach turned to ice. I stumbled back from the window, my mind spinning. Whatever this was, it wasn't just some casual secret. It was about me. And if I didn't find out what it was soon, I had the terrible feeling that whatever they were planning might ruin everything. I didn't sleep at all after what I saw near the train tracks. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured her standing in that dimly lit shed, pointing at those papers, whispering about me like I was some threat. By morning, my decision was made. I couldn't just keep following her aimlessly. I needed proof. That afternoon, while she was out running errands, I tore through the junk drawer until I found the small digital recorder I'd bought years ago for work meetings. I charged it, tested it twice, then tucked it under the shoe rack near the front door. If she left again tonight, I'd have her footsteps, her voice, everything. But even that didn't feel like enough. I grabbed my phone charger, fully juiced my battery, and deleted a few apps to make room for video. Tonight, I was going to follow closer than ever, close enough to get a picture, maybe even a video. By the time the clock struck 1:50 a.m., my nerves were shot. My palms were sweating, my shirt clung to my back. I paced the living room like a caged animal until I finally heard it, the faint creak of the bedroom door. I turned off the TV and crouched by the shoe rack, pretending to look for something. The front door opened. The recorder's red light blinked once, and she slipped out into the night. I waited 5 seconds, grabbed my phone, and followed. The night was colder than usual, my breath visible in white puffs. She was a dark figure ahead of me, her steps fast and determined. This time, she didn't go toward the park. She took the same route as the previous night, toward the tracks. I stayed even closer now, ducking behind cars and trees when she slowed. At one point, she stopped suddenly, looking over her shoulder. I pressed myself flat against a fence, holding my breath. After a long pause, she kept going. When she reached the shed, she knocked twice. The door opened, the same man appeared, and she stepped inside. I crept to the side window, careful not to make a sound. Inside, the table was again covered in papers, but this time there was more: a laptop, a stack of envelopes, and something that looked like a small metal box. My wife's voice was sharper tonight, almost panicked. "He's getting suspicious," she said. The man frowned. "Then we have to move faster. Do you have the documents?" She pulled a thick envelope from her coat pocket and laid it on the table. I took out my phone and hit record, zooming in as far as I could through the dirty glass. My hands were shaking, but I held it steady. "I can't just take everything without him noticing," she said. "If he finds out before we're ready." "He already suspects," the man cut her off. "That's why we have to finish tonight." "Finish what?" My head was spinning. I pressed closer to the window, desperate to hear more. Suddenly, the man slammed his hand on the table, making me flinch. "No more delays, Anna. If he doesn't know by now, he will soon. And when he does, there's no going back." "Anna." Hearing him say her name felt like a knife in my chest. I could see her shoulders shaking slightly, like she was holding back tears. "I never wanted it to be like this," she whispered. Then she opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers, and my blood turned to ice. Even through the dirty glass, I could see what they were. Bank statements. My bank statements. I almost dropped my phone. Why the hell did she have those? The man leaned closer to her, his voice lower now, but I still caught a few words. "Transfer, shut it down, before he notices." Transfer? Shut what down? My mind raced through every possibility. Our joint account, my savings, my business credit line. I stepped back from the window, breathing hard. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure they'd hear it. I had seen enough. I turned and started back toward the street, my legs moving on autopilot. Halfway down the block, I realized my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold my phone. I stopped under a streetlight, replaying the short video clip I had just recorded. There she was, my wife, standing with some stranger, holding my financial records like they belonged to her, talking about moving fast before I found out. Whatever this was, it was no longer just suspicious. It was a threat. When I got home, I grabbed the recorder from under the shoe rack and played it back. Her footsteps, her whispering, the sound of the door. It wasn't much, but it was proof that she'd been sneaking out night after night. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, staring at the phone screen, at her frozen face on the video. When she walked into the kitchen at 8 a.m., her hair damp from a shower, wearing the same soft robe she always wore, I almost lost it. She smiled at me gently. "You're up early." I forced a smile back, hiding the storm raging inside me. Because now I knew. And tonight, I was going to confront her and find out everything, no matter what it took. I didn't go to work the next day. I called in sick, which wasn't even a lie. My stomach was in knots, my hands wouldn't stop shaking, and my head felt like it was splitting open from lack of sleep. All day, I replayed the video over and over, my thumb pausing on her face, her hands, the stack of papers on the table. I kept asking myself the same question. Asterisk why? Asterisk. By the time night came, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to follow her again. I wasn't going to spy through windows. I was going to wait for her. And when she came back, I was going to get answers. I turned off all the lights except the small lamp in the kitchen and sat at the table, my phone in front of me, the video queued up and ready. Around 2 a.m., I heard the front door open. My chest tightened. Her footsteps were soft, careful, like she didn't want to wake me. When she turned the corner into the kitchen, she stopped dead in her tracks. I was sitting there, staring at her. For a long moment, we just looked at each other in silence. Then I said, my voice low, "Where were you?" She blinked, clearly startled. "I told you before. I went for a walk." I cut her off. "Don't lie to me." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I reached for my phone, hit play, and turned the screen toward her. The video played, her standing in the shed, the man's voice low, her whispering about me. She went pale. "Explain this," I said. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled out a chair and sat down across from me. "I was going to tell you," she said quietly. "When..." My voice cracked. "Before or after you took everything from me?" Her eyes widened. "It's not what you think." "Really?" "Because what I think is that my wife has been sneaking out every night, meeting some stranger in the middle of the night, with my bank statements on the table, whispering about moving fast before I notice. So tell me, Anna, what the hell am I supposed to think?" She flinched at my tone, but didn't look away. "It's not an affair," she said finally. I laughed bitterly. "Oh, good. So instead of cheating on me, you're just what? Planning to rob me blind?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't speak right away. "Say something." I slammed my hand on the table, making her jump. Finally, she whispered, "It's about your brother." The words hit me like a punch. "My brother? What does he have to do with this?" She hesitated, glancing down at the table. "I found out some things about the money he borrowed from you last year. Things he didn't tell you. And if you find out the wrong way, it could ruin everything. Your business, your credit." I frowned. "So your solution was to sneak around behind my back? To meet some guy at 2 in the morning and go through my private accounts?" "It's not like that," she said, her voice suddenly sharp. "I was trying to fix it before you got hurt." I stared at her, stunned. "Fix it?" I repeated. "By lying to me? By making me think I'm losing my mind?" She buried her face in her hands. "I didn't want you to look at your brother the way I look at mine," she said quietly. "I know what it's like to lose family over money. I thought I could solve it quietly. I thought if I just handled it, you'd never have to know." I sat back, breathing hard. "So who's the guy?" She wiped her face and looked up at me. "He's a lawyer. A friend from college. He's been helping me try to negotiate with the people your brother owes. It's not small, and if they come after you..." She stopped herself, biting her lip. "If they come after me, what?" I pressed. She hesitated, then said, "You could lose everything." My stomach turned. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But part of me was still screaming that this was too much of a coincidence, too elaborate to be innocent. "Then why keep it a secret?" I asked. "Because I was afraid you'd go straight to your brother, and he'd run, or make it worse. I thought if I handled it first." Her voice broke. I stared at her for a long time. The kitchen so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Finally, I stood up. "You should have told me," I said. "From the start." She didn't argue. I grabbed my phone and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her sitting there at the table, her shoulders slumped, tears running down her face. But even as I went to the bedroom, my mind wouldn't stop spinning. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe she really was trying to protect me. Or maybe this was just another layer of lies. Either way, I wasn't done. Because tomorrow night, if she left again, I was going to follow her one last time. And this time, I was going to get every answer I'd been missing. The next night, I didn't bother pretending to sleep. I sat in the living room with my jacket on, keys in my pocket, phone fully charged. My whole body was tense, every muscle wired like a coiled spring. At 2:08 a.m., I heard it again. The soft creak of the bedroom door, the slow footsteps in the hall, the faint metallic click of the front lock. But this time, when the door opened, I was already standing there. She froze when she saw me, hands still on the doorknob. "You're going again," I said quietly. She swallowed hard. "Yes. Then I'm coming with you." Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't argue. She just nodded once, turned, and started walking. The night was cold, the streetlights casting long, thin shadows. We walked in silence for nearly 10 minutes, my footsteps crunching on the asphalt just behind hers. When we reached the edge of town, she glanced back at me, her expression unreadable, then led me toward the abandoned maintenance shed. The man was already there, waiting outside this time. When he saw me, his brows furrowed. "This wasn't the plan," he said to her. "It is now," I said flatly, stepping forward. "If you have something to say about me, say it to my face." He hesitated, then stepped aside and gestured toward the door. Inside, the shed smelled of dust and old wood. The single light bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered as we entered. The table was once again covered in papers. Only now there were more. Contracts, printed emails, a few photographs. I scanned them quickly, recognizing my brother's signature on several of the documents. "Talk," I said. My wife took a deep breath. "Your brother owes a lot more than he told you. He used your name as a guarantor on one of the loans, without asking. If the creditors come for repayment, they'll come after you first." I felt like the floor had just dropped out from under me. "What?" The man, the lawyer, apparently, stepped closer. "It's true. I verified it myself. If we don't act fast, they can freeze your accounts, seize assets. You could lose your business." My stomach turned. "And what was your plan?" I asked through clenched teeth. "Sneak around until you fixed it? Keep me in the dark while my whole life hung by a thread?" "We were trying to protect you," she said, tears in her eyes. "I thought if I could negotiate with them, get them to settle, you'd never have to know. You wouldn't lose your brother and your business at the same time." I stared at her, my throat tight. "You should have told me," I said. "I know," she whispered. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We have one chance to make this right. If we transfer part of the money tonight, they'll hold off legal action. Then we can renegotiate the rest before the end of the month. But we need your approval." My head was spinning. This was everything I'd been afraid of, and worse. I looked at the papers again, my name staring back at me from every page. My wife reached out, her fingers brushing mine. "Please," she said softly, "let us fix this together." For a long moment, I just stood there, breathing hard. Then I signed. When we got home, just before dawn, the house felt different, heavier somehow, like the walls were holding their breath. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. I nodded, but I couldn't look at her. Not yet. Because even though I finally had answers, even though the threat was real and not in my head, something between us had shifted. Trust, once cracked, doesn't just snap back into place. I went to bed as the first light of morning crept through the curtains. She stayed in the kitchen. When I finally closed my eyes, one thought wouldn't stop circling in my mind. Maybe she saved me tonight. Or maybe she just showed me a part of herself I can never unsee. And now I don't know what scares me more, losing my brother, losing my money, or losing my wife. What would you do if you were me? Could you forgive someone for lying if they swore it was to protect you?